Conway, Arkansas. And you know what time it is. It is Wednesday word time. So what is our Wednesday word for tonight, Pastor Maltbia? Our Wednesday word is conflict. So what is conflict? It's a disagreement over opposing viewpoints. Conflict. It's when you don't see eye to eye over an issue. It's when you clash over something that you have a disagreement about. And so today I thought what we would do is spend our time talking about 3 tips that can help you manage conflict. 3 tips you can use when you don't see eye to eye with your friends, your spouse, your co-workers, or those you meet along the way. So what do you do to manage conflict in your life? Step number 1, make sure your heart is right first. Now that's good teaching. You got to make sure that your heart is right first. Jesus himself says in Matthew chapter 7, verses 4 and 5, he says, "How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there is a plank in your eye? You hypocrite," Jesus says, "first take the plank out of your eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." In other words, here's what Jesus is really saying. Conflict resolution begins with the man in the mirror. Now that's good teaching. In fact, maybe you ought to write that in the comment section. Conflict resolution begins with the man in the mirror. Before you try to address someone else's flaws, before you try to address somebody else's shortcomings, you've got to address your own. You've got to start with the man in the mirror. I often tell people, please, ma'ams and sirs, talk to God before you talk to the individual. Before you confront someone with an issue, before you confront somebody with an opposing opinion, take the time to pray. The songwriter says, have a little talk with Jesus and tell him all about your troubles. You've got to take the time to pray. Talk to God before you talk to the individual. And while you're talking to God, sincerely ask him, Lord, show me my part in the conflict. Ask him to show you where you overreacted. Ask him to show you where perhaps you misunderstood something that was said. But ask him to show you your part in the conflict. Ask God to show you where your attitude needs to be adjusted. Ask God to show you where your anger got out of control. Ask God to show you your part in the conflict. Conflict resolution begins with the man in the mirror. You've got to make sure that your heart is right first. In your prayer time, ask God to show you how you could have done things differently and how you can make things better. The first step in conflict resolution is make sure your heart is right first. But then secondly, you've got to address the issue respectfully. Yeah, key word, respectfully. I like the way the Apostle Paul puts it in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 15. The first phrase of that verse simply says, but speaking the truth in love. I tell people all the time, when it comes to conflict resolution, when it comes to solving differences of opinion between two people, your tone of voice always matters. They always told me when I was growing up, it's not always what you say, but rather how you say it that causes the problem, that causes the tension, that causes the misunderstanding. You have got to address the issue, but address it respectfully. So that means you've got to learn how to control your anger in the heat of the moment. Angry outbursts, hurtful speech, and condescending tones simply triggers negative results and negative reactions from the person you're trying to reach. You've got to learn to control your anger when your emotions are high. In fact, here's our social media quote for tonight. I encourage you to write it in the comment section. Perhaps you want to email it or text it to someone or put it on your social media platform. But here it is, social media quote. Stay calm and think before you speak. Stay calm and think before you speak. So here's the question. Do the things you say in the middle of a heated discussion, does your tone of voice, does your temperament make things better? Or does it in fact make things worse? You got to take a breath. You got to calm down. And you got to think about what you're about to say. Controlling your anger matters. Your tone of voice matters. But then your body language matters. People pick up on your nonverbal communication whether you know it or not. They pick up on your facial expressions. They pick up on your gestures. They pick up on whether or not you're making eye contact with them or simply looking at your phone or the television. Your nonverbal skills and communication certainly matters. Not only does your body language, nonverbal communication matter, not only does your ability to control your anger matter, not only does your tone of speech matter, but here's the last one. Personal space matters. Personal space is very important to people, particularly in moments of conflict and debate. You've got to understand, walking into someone's personal space in the moment of a heated discussion, many people see that as a direct threat or an act of aggression. You got to understand that personal space must be respected in the midst of a heated debate. And I'll just add this bonus one and then I'm going to move to point 3. Ignoring the problem never makes it go away. Yeah. Ignoring the problem, pretending like it's not there, never makes the problem better. In fact, over time, it makes the problem worse. If you want to properly manage your conflict, and we're all going to have conflict from time to time, you got to make sure your heart is right first. You got to ask God to show you your part in the conflict. But then after you pray about it, you've got to address the issue with the other individual respectively, speaking the truth in love. And then finally tonight, don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Yeah. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. In other words, don't take something relatively small and blow it way out of proportion. Why do we do that, Pastor? Why do we exaggerate and blow things out of proportion? And there are a lot of reasons why, but here's just a few. Because in the heat of the moment, our emotions take over. Because in the heat of the moment, our anger begins to move before we think about it. Because in the heat of the moment, sometimes we are embarrassed, our feelings are hurt, or sometimes it's simply because we've had a bad day. But please, ma'ams and sirs, stop making mountains out of molehills. Stop exaggerating the severity and the negative impact of things. Quit making small things big. Here's a good example. Making mountains out of molehills is the very reason why somebody accidentally getting bumped in a crowded nightclub ends up losing their life. Making a mountain out of a molehill has caused many people to get a divorce. Making a mountain out of a molehill can lead to or lead from having an insignificant argument that blows up until someone loses their life. Stop making mountains out of molehills. Take a breath, think it through, pray about it before you address the issue. 1 Peter 4:8 says it like this: above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. What Peter is really saying here is this: when you love people, there are some things you overlook because they're not worth getting into an argument. Don't wear your feelings on your shoulders. Don't take everything so personally. You got to learn to overlook small offenses. And you've got to stop making small things a bigger issue than they really are. Our Wednesday word tonight is conflict. It's all about when you don't see eye to eye. How do we manage that conflict, Pastor Maltby? It begins with the man in the mirror, making sure your heart is right first. And once you talk to God, and He's showing you your part in the conflict, then you can go and address the issue with the person. But remember to do it respectfully. Remember your tone of voice. Remember your level of anger. Remember your body language. And remember to give them their personal space. And then finally, please, ma'ams and sirs, stop making mountains out of molehills. Until we speak again, my friends, be blessed.